People think, well, I can biohack my life into longevity, but it doesn't work like that. It's not just about the physical. So people are throwing 100% of their energy into the physical to the point that some people aren't even connecting with other people. And a massive part of our mind management is deep, meaningful connection. We told depression and anxiety are diseases. They're not diseases, they're signals. When you're in grief and you cry, hormones come out in those tears. And those hormones have built up in your body because of the grief, which is overwhelming. So your body generates more chemicals. All the things that are happening in the world around us are going into the mind. And if they go in chaotically, they go into the brain and the body. Chaotic mind, chaotic brain, chaotic body, chaotic life.
Dr. Caroline Leaf is a neuroscientist specializing in cognitive and metacognitive processes. Her passion is to help people to see the power of their mind and to change the brain, control chaotic thinking, and find mental peace. She's the author of several best-selling books, including Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, as well as the author of numerous research studies published in peer-reviewed scientific journals. Dr. Leaf, we need your help. Many of us feel overwhelmed, anxious, sometimes just flat out lost. What's going on?
Well, Shawn, it's so good to be back with you, by the way. Always have such great conversations. And I wrote that book because that is exactly the cry that all of us, including myself, you just feel like you need help in a hurry. We live in such a world of overwhelm, as you say, and burnout. And I can tell you, I know the answer. And the answer is that we're not managing our mind. And people think that may sound so simplistic, but our mind is 99% of who we are, and it's driving our physiology. It's driving everything. It drives our psychology. It drives our physiology. So if we don't manage our mind, all the things that are happening in the world around us are going into the mind. And if they go in chaotically, they go into the brain and the body chaotically, because the brain and the body host the mind. Mm-hmm. And therefore, chaotic brain, chaotic mind, chaotic brain, chaotic body, chaotic life. And then that cycle sets up a loop between the conscious mind and the brain and body, but skips out our non-conscious mind, which we can go into and explain in detail in a moment. But basically, that's where our wisdom lies, where our spiritual level, or whatever you want to call it. Scientifically, we call it the non-conscious, but it's where the stuff that we need to make good decisions is, and where all our memories are, and all our wisdom and everything is stored. And when we live in this chaotic mode, which is just between the conscious mind, which is pretty limited, and the brain and body, we're going to feel increasingly overwhelmed. And the way that life is so busy and fast in our current age, every generation faces something, but we are dealing with a very fast-paced society, and it goes against a lot of how we are actually wired as humans. We're wired to take time to think through things deeply and to process and to get insight and to have deep, meaningful conversations, not this quick, fast, which we've become. And that's created this loop. And people are getting sick. People are getting mentally unhealthy.
Yeah, it's just like the way that our society is structured is feeding anxiety. It's feeding overwhelm. It's feeding all these. Totally. It's not just something that just came out of nowhere, but kind of did. But there's a reason behind it. There's a reason why. And you just mentioned something that a lot of people don't realize, which is our mind is really creating our body. It's creating what's happening with our body. Mm-hmm. And psychoneurobiology is one of your specialties. And so a lot of the things that we're feeling and seeing with our own physical body, it has a lot to do with what's happening with our minds. And as you've been teaching us for years now, and even before I even met you, learning from you from afar, that we simply we're just kind of thrown into this new environment and we don't know how to manage our minds, let alone know what it is. And so let's give a little bit of a brief review of our mind, because a lot of people think that the mind and the brain are synonymous, that they're one, but there's a distinction. Let's talk a little bit about that.
I'm so glad you started there, Shawn, because for the past 40 to 50 years, one of the worst things that's come out of the research over that time period has been this a mixture, or this kind of collapsing into neuroreductionism, which is people thinking that the mind is the brain, exactly like you've described. And why I say that's not great is because it's taken a lot of our humanity out of us, and it's really focused on us being very much just the physical, the mechanical part. So if one piece is missing, just put the missing piece in or replace the missing piece. So one chemical is not working, then put another chemical in. So we've become very reductionistic, and that has, it's a weird paradox, because we've advanced in medicine, we've advanced in science, we've advanced in technology, but we've gone way backwards when it comes to the understanding of the human mind. And we're kind of doing what philosophers predicted thousands of years ago, and what one of my university professors predicted 40 years ago when I started in this field. And that was that if we make everything about the brain, about something that's 1% of, not even 1% of what we are, we're going to have a problem. So as we focus on that, then we shift our perspective. So the problem is that we can't see, the mind and the brain are not the same thing. And I know that that's such a strange thing for people to hear, because for 50 years, the media and the scientific world have fed this message that the mind is the brain. And people will say, my brain, my mind, as though it's the same thing. They are so radically different. So different that there's not even a remote similarity. So the brain is, there's a little model of the brain. Your brain is about the size of your two fists, weighs about 3.5 pounds, and it is literally a physical organ that's part of the whole body. And the brain and the body collectively are 1% of who you are as a human. 1%. So if something this is, and this with the body, so we've also been told that that this is the mind, that the brain is the mind. They almost like synonyms. And we've also been told that this is where everything happens. All our memories are stored, all our thoughts, all our emotions, and billions of dollars and many years of research have been put into saying, well, if you said this part of your brain's not working properly, and this chemical's not working properly, this part, this is causing this. So very reductionistic, down to the idea of a mechanical, take this out, put that in. And that's never been proven. It's no matter how much research has happened, they've never been able to conclusively say, well, this is the case. Classic example was the research on ADHD, where they did a bunch of research and there was a huge media coverage of this research, and they basically were saying that people with ADHD have different brains, they're smaller. And that research was, and I'm giving you the sort of very summarized version, that research was pulled apart very quickly. And for years, the scientists that know what they're doing have questioned that, and what they showed was that isn't what the research actually showed. Now those same scientists are saying, hey, maybe we didn't present this research quite accurately. Now all these years later, after telling everyone ADHD is a thing and your brain is smaller and there's something wrong with you, now they're saying, actually that's not the case. We've actually looked at ADHD wrong. And that's a classic example of what we see happening now. By making everything reduced down to being all about the brain producing it, puts the onus on a physical organ that actually has no power, that is nothing without your mind. When you're dead, this brain is doing nothing. You're disintegrating. Within 10 to 20 seconds of your heart stopping, your brain flatlines, and every part of your body starts disintegrating within that time period, and then over a period of a few hours, and everything's gone. But when you're alive, it's working. So what is making your brain work? What makes your heart pump? What enables me to be Caroline and you to be Shawn? What enables you to love and have your intelligence and your personality and your perception of life and your view and appreciating a sunset and great food? And we were talking about food earlier on, so that popped in my mind. That is your mind. Your mind is what is you. It's your aliveness. It's your ability to think and feel and choose and experience and be different to other people and love and hate. And we shouldn't be hating, but we do, and make choices and all these things. It also drives the physiology. So it's the mind that actually makes the brain work. It makes your genes work. It makes your body digest. It makes your immune system work. It makes your heart pump. So that's why when we die and the mind actually moves out whatever belief system one has, then everything stops. So it's kind of the switch off button happens. So the mind's massive. It's got different layers. There's different levels. And the brain is a host to the mind. And the body is a host to the mind. And the brain and body therefore respond to the mind. So the mind is fundamental. The mind is a priority. However, the last 40 to 50 years, the focus has been on everything around the brain and the physical body. Now, I'm not saying don't eat well. You and I both know that this is critically important. You teach them on your show, exercise, eating correctly. These are vital because your mind has to work through things that work. So your brain and your body has to work. So if our mind's messy and our brain's messy, from our mind being messy and our body, thank you, and we're not looking after our body, then we've got, from our mind perspective, we are generating an energy that's disruptive, and then that creates damage in the brain. And if we're not eating as well, or doing exercise, and eating the correct way and doing exercise, we've now got that, we're putting substance in our body that's not, or not doing exercise. That's from two angles, we're damaging our brain and our body. Then we look at the world we live in, where the stats show us that in the last few years, there's been such a massive increase. People are dying 8 to 25 years younger from preventable lifestyle diseases. And that's not, lifestyle diseases are responsible, as you know, you teach on the show, are responsible for basically, lifestyle diseases are things that we can manage. Lifestyle means our lifestyle is something. So and lifestyle includes exercise, diet, as we know, but it's predominantly mind. We have to do all of that. So that means only about 5% is genetic and so on, and we can still manage those with our mind. So we focus on the brain and the body, and then a little bit of stress management or meditation is thrown in as almost like a side effect. People will say 4 pillars of healing, and it'll be diet, exercise predominantly, and then there'll be a little bit of stress management. And that's the wrong way around. We should be making everything about mind, because even the way your mind is working is going to affect the 800 to 1 million cells you make every second. So you might be doing the exercise, eating correctly, so you doing that side properly, but your mind's a mess. So you're going to so the actual good that you're achieving with the good eating is being disrupted by the mind, because the mind is going to actually disrupt the DNA as you're eating. So you're not going to get that same level of benefit. Some studies have shown it's up to a 90% loss of benefit when our mind's messy and we're doing that workout. In Orange Theory, you're working out in the gym and you're eating your healthy food, but your mind is a mess. So you get benefit a little bit, but you're going to lose a lot of that benefit very quickly because of the mind. So I know that's a long answer, but I think it kind of gives, or if you want to dive in a little deeper.
You're helping us to direct our attention to what matters most, truly.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful, because we don't think of, same thing in our university classes, even our DNA is just very mechanistic, right? Like we've got this DNA, it's printing out these copies, but our thoughts, our mind is influencing our DNA, what it's doing every single microsecond.
Every single microsecond.
And so also I love that analogy of the mind working through parts that work well, right? And so that's why we want to strive, of course, to do those things as well.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like, what popped into my mind when you said that was like a signal coming through a really powerful antenna in broadcasting, or a coat hanger.
Exactly.
Right? You know, and so like, can you handle the wattage? Can you handle the, the good, all the things that you're wanting to manifest in your life, and creating a vessel for it to be transmitted through, right? So you're taking care of that, but it starts with your mind. Our mind is determining all the choices that we're making,
exactly.
And we want to habituate those things. We want to habituate things that help to support the body and help to support our relationships. And again, so often we're looking at things the reverse way, right?
Exactly.
We're trying to push ups our way into fitness instead of getting your mind right so that the push-ups are just automatic.
Exactly, because then you'll automatically do them. You'll want to, when your mind is right, you'll want to eat healthy. You'll want to do the push-ups. There's just it's natural. I need my body to function. I mean, just look at the longevity movement. That's also finally now it's doing a full cycle where there's been such a focus on, living forever and living longer, and the obsession with biohacking and these kinds of things, that it's good in the sense that it's made people more aware, but it's bad in the sense that people think, well, I can biohack my life into longevity, but it doesn't work like that. It's not just about the physical. So people are throwing 100% of their energy into the physical, to the point that some people aren't even connecting with other people. And a massive part of our mind management is deep, meaningful connection. It's having those deep conversations. It's thinking deeply. It's building the stories of our life with other people in our lives. And that's, when you're so busy looking off, self-focused, that's a problem. And there's another area that's been so distorted, and that's the whole self-help movement. And people may say, well, you and I in self-help. Yes, we are, but we're trying to do it correctly. There's the self-help movement where people can be so focused on, I've got to meditate now, I've got to do this now, I've got to wear this tracker to get this amount of sleep, I've got to do this amount of meditation, I've got to get focused on my boundaries. It makes them selfish. So the balances are off. And I see that happening when we don't regulate our mind. But if your mind is regulated, then you'll do the right amount of biohacking, the right amount of exercise, the right kind of eating, the right kind of things that will help to have a healthy lifespan, whatever the longevity is. So we don't want to just live longer, we want to live healthier as well. So it's just to bring balance back. And you see that. The research shows if you don't focus on mind as your predominant first pillar of everything, and it's the overarching, you're going to have distortion in how people apply things into their lifestyle. And then the diseases increase. We haven't got less diseases. The stats do not say that. Yes, we've got certain things under control. Yes, people do live longer, but quality of life has not improved.
That reversed.
It's reversed. A lot of it's reversed, and also mental health is worse than it's ever been. Yeah. So, and if all the medical model worked, the biomedical neuroreductionistic model worked, we would have improvement in mental health. Yet we've got people dying 8 to 25 years younger from preventable lifestyle diseases, which are related to mind management. And we have a whole mental health system that is actually just telling people there's something wrong with your brain, there's something wrong with you. What about society? What about the environment? Who we are is based on what are we living in, our family unit, the environment that we in, the socioeconomic, the political, the geographical, all those affect us. Life affects us. How are we teaching our kids? Are we teaching ourselves how to process life and the ups and downs of life? No, we're not. We're saying, you feel sad? Oh gosh, there's something wrong with you. You've had 5 episodes of feeling depressed this week. Forget about where it comes from. You've got a disease of depression. You've got a chemical imbalance. Not even science. It hasn't even been proved. It's been disproved. But that's what people are being told. And then they take that label in, they merge with the environments, they go on TikTok and self-diagnose even more. And we're sitting with this problem and they think, what's happening? Why are people overwhelmed? We've so much incorrect messaging.
The bottom line is it working, right? So the things that we've done to feel better, our mental health, our physical health, it's largely not working. It's been unsuccessful. No. There are some people who figure some things out, but it's in the minority. And so one of the things that's so powerful about your work is, again, you're directing us to the first domino that addresses everything.
Exactly.
Right? And which is the mind. And so we get to address this from a true place of power. Because right now, our conditions are such that, and I'm going to say this loosely because I know you're always analyzing.
I'm going to have a sip of tea while I listen to your great statement.
So we're living in a society that is, I'm saying this loosely again, hijacking our minds. Right?
Totally.
And I'm saying that loosely because our minds are always ours. No one can truly hijack our minds. It's just you being aware and being intentional about how you're using your mind. But I think a possible better way to say that is that they're kind of borrowing our minds, right? And without our permission. And we're loaning it out. We're giving silent permission for, all these different brilliant engineers, right, to keep you on these different apps and, in the way that science has been disseminated, looking for these mechanistic things to fix me outside of myself, right? So
external locus of control.
And not to mention, and this is where now we're going to get into some of the things that we can actually change and help with today that we're feeling. Many of us are feeling this, and I think we're feeling this. I know we're feeling this more than ever. In addition to life's general ups and downs, now we've got so many more decisions to make and things to deal with that can influence and make us feel even worse if we make the wrong decision, make us feel even more guilt and shame and live with more regret than we ever have. And regret, I think, is a very ubiquitous feeling. It's pervasive in our culture today because there's this FOMO, right? There's so much going on. I should have did this, should have did that. Let alone the big ups and downs, right? Making a decision on, who we're spending our time with or our life with, or, a decision that we make in, maybe an injury that we're dealing with, or the list goes on and on. We make a decision and we feel regret about the decision, right? Maybe it's in regards to losing a loved one in some form or fashion and the regret behind that. What are some of the things that we could do? Let's talk about regret. And let's talk about healing. Let's talk about getting some help in a hurry. Maybe we're feeling stuck in regret. What are some of the things that we can do?
Okay, I love how you phrased that whole, how you prepared the groundwork for that question. It's really beautiful and it's very important. I'm going to answer that very quickly in 2 ways. First part is that all these, as you so rightly said, there's all these things we can do, but that's overwhelming doing them. It's actually made our lives, we've got to be productive, we've got to be happy, we've got to be, it's just so much stuff that it's taken away from a lot of the peace. Now, it doesn't mean that each of those incredible inventions by all these scientists and all these, they're all good. They're all going to create some positive change. But we've lost the ability to make the decision to manage them. And then that's where things like, as you say, regret and so on come in. So I just wanted to stress that we're not saying don't ever use any of those things. We're not saying don't eat healthy. We're saying do all of those things. But before you do anything and regret that, first get your mind right, because when your mind is right, you'll have wisdom. And when your wisdom is there, you will deal with, and we're going to dive into the regret now, but you'll know what to do and what not to do. You'll recognize when you actually, I don't need those 400 different things. I just need to get a more simple routine, and maybe I'll do that another time. You start getting more balance back. And that's what's really missing in this society is a imbalance. And it's coming from a lack of mind management. So to come to regret, such a great example, because it's not something that only a few people experience. 100% of people experience regret. It's a part of being human. It's very normal. It's okay. It's okay to not be okay. And that's a big message of what I'm trying to convey to people. And when I wrote this book, Help in a Hurry, as you know, I've written a lot of books, and they deal with the healing journey and habit formation and the science of, and we can talk a little bit about that. And we still need to do that. That's really important in order for us to rewire our mind, brain, body network. It takes time. It's going to take cycles of 63 days. And I know we spoke about that last time, and we can touch on that a little bit later. But in the moment, when I have something that I regret, I need to know what to do right now so that I can actually direct the next 63 seconds. Because the 63 seconds leads to 2 minutes and 3 minutes and 1 hour and a day and a week. So if I can learn to self-regulate now in this moment when I'm triggered, whether it is someone making me angry, whether it is something I'm regretting, whether it is someone who I want to punch in the face, whether it is people pleasing, I catch myself, all the kind of hot buttons which I've tried to touch on in this book. If I know how to catch myself and regulate myself in that moment and calm down my neurophysiology, tap into my wisdom, then I can identify patterns, and I can then do the work, which takes a little longer, which goes through the healing journey of habit formation and change, which takes cycles of 63 days. So I say all that to say, when we talk about regret is something that everyone battles with. It's totally normal. It's okay. I'm stressing it's okay to regret. Regret, if you know what to do with it in the 63 seconds, you can make it work for you and not against you. Every single one of these things, you can make people-pleasing work for you and not against you. You can make anger work for you and not against you, if you know how to manage the moment. And if you know how to manage the moment, you can recognize the pattern. If you can recognize the pattern, you can rewire the network. So it's like a starting point, and that's what these techniques are for. So regret creates a cycle, and it's a cycle of if only, could have, should have, would have. And it's if I had done there and been there at that time, then there would have been this happening and there would have been that happening. So there's certain facts that we create that are partially true because they didn't happen, but they're based on sufficient evidence and data that seem kind of like they could actually be real. And that's why regret's so almost insidious, because it feels so right to do that regret, if that makes sense. So something's happened, maybe it's a business decision that seems so right at the time. Maybe it's a loved one that you're helping. Maybe it is, whatever it is, maybe it's something that you ate or said or did, TV you watched, something you listened to which you wish you didn't because now you can't get it out your head. And you start imagining, if I didn't go down that road at that, if I was there at that time, if I did this, if I said that, if I could have done it this way, I could have recognized that in July last year, that business decision was not the correct one and I could have gone this way and we wouldn't have wasted. So we're very good at saying what it is, and then we're very good at creating a movie of counterfactuals. And a counterfactual is taking that fact that happened and building stories around it that are counter to the facts because they didn't happen and they're not going to happen because the past is finished. And there's upward and downward counterfactuals. An upward counterfactual is actually worse than a downward one. An upward one is there's a more positive result. So in other words, it feels like it would have been better. So you say, if I had got there in time, that wouldn't have happened. And then that leads to guilt. If I had not done that, then I would have saved this amount of money. I wouldn't have got in this, and this wouldn't have. And so it seemed an upward counterfactual means things would have been better if only could have, should have, would have had actually happened. And the downward counterfactual is, well, if I'd done that, a worse thing would have happened. So an upward counterfactual is so close to the situation, but it seems like a positive thing would have resulted if you'd done that. So it catches you, makes you feel sick to the core, and can really keep you in a loop between the conscious mind, which is very powerful because it creates, but it's very limited because it's like a toddler. And it's chaotic, and it's all over the place, and it has to be controlled by the non-conscious, which is our wisdom. But an upward counterfactual, a regret upward counterfactual, which is something that this would have been better if I did that, keeps us stuck in the conscious mind, brain, body loop. Now, the brain and body are hosts. They don't do any thinking. They can't think. They only respond. And they're only designed to respond to healthy stuff, like healthy regret, healthy anger. So when we come in with toxic regret, where I now am in a loop where I just can't get beyond this point. I wish I had done that. And depression comes in and it affects you, and it's viral in the way it spreads, and it carries over into your work and in your relationship and the day, and you get more and more depressed and anxious, and you land up at the doctor and you think you get told you have a disorder. Meanwhile, you've got stuck in that loop, and it's just every moment, it's just another upward counterfactual, that another reason why you were so, and then self-doubt, shame, etc. And it just goes, and that is energy. That's, your mind is not some vapor. Nothing. It is electromagnetic energy. The exact thing that makes your cell phone work is a very, very, basic form of our mind. Our mind's electromagnetic energy. Electromagnetic energy is a spectrum. It's based on quantum physics principles. It's linked to gravitational fields. We have a field around us and through us. And this is not woo-woo stuff. This is hardcore science. It's been proven over and over and so that's the energy that we pick up on a QEEG in your brain, on an EKG when you have your heart tested, if you have an MRI, whatever. When we use any kind of technology to look inside the human body, what we're seeing is the energy of the mind. We're seeing the impact of our thoughts inside of our body. That's what we're literally seeing. And we're seeing the result of the impact of our thoughts and what it's done physically to our body. So we pick up the damage. Yeah. So we pick up the wrong energy, and we pick up the result of the wrong energy. You throw the computer on the floor, we're going to have a computer that's not working. So when we mess up our mind, when we stay stuck in that regret cycle, we are putting that kind of energy in the brain, creating a structural damage in the brain and the body, because our memory is everywhere. It's even in your toes and your fingers. It's everywhere. Right. So that the constant pounding of that wrong energy creates a structural damage. So then we're dealing physically with some kind of damage to our genes, to our immune system, to our hormones, to whatever, heart, cardiovascular. For example, anger. If we stay in a state of anger for long, which regret can lead to levels of anger, because we get angry at ourselves, we get self-critical. So even though these are chapters in the book, one can lead into the other, and that kind of thing. And for example, anger will release a lot of catecholamines, I can never say that word, which then affect our heart and can lead to cardiovascular disease, heart problems with your heart, high blood pressure, and that kind of thing. And that's a result of the mind using the brain and the body, specifically the heart in this case, where it's being damaged.
I want to talk more about anger.
Okay, we're going to jump to that
in just a moment.
Let's finish the regret.
So, and this was what I was going to say, actually. Did you read my mind?
Yeah.
Our fields are interacting.
Totally interacting.
But it's the fact that, again, we tend to think that our brain is our mind, but every cell in our body basically has antenna or receptors that are picking up our mind.
Exactly.
Right? So our mind isn't just local, right?
No,
just in one spot.
No.
Our whole body is in this field of our mind.
Your toes have got memories.
Yeah,
I told that to Mel Robbins the other day, and she could not get it. There's that song, I feel it in my fingers, I can't sing. I feel it in my toes. I don't know if you know which song that I'm talking about. Anyway, there's a song, I think it's one of Elton John's songs. I don't know, I'm not sure. But literally.
I thought it was The Weeknd, I Can't Feel My Face.
No, it's I feel it in my fingers, I can't sing. So the
Okay,
tune's going to come out.
We're putting that on wax. We're going to remix it.
We're going to find it. Exactly.
We
there
have
we go.
musicians in this room right now. So
no, I definitely don't want to sing it. But essentially, yes, that when you experience a regret, you are building that into this zone of your mind first. So the mind is the first, number one. If you get a sequence going and you create it, it's like, if you imagine this world, this zone around me, this energy field that's around and through me, so imagine it's sort of circling all around me, this energy pulsing electromagnetic field. The thought that you're building builds into all the details gathered together in little particles and literally form a cloud. So it's literally like raindrops form a cloud. The particles of information form a thought. Literally. So around me, all over me, all around you, all around whoever's listening and watching, every human, we have our field and every experience of these clouds going around us. In any one moment, we're building these clouds. There's information coming from the outside that are adding to the clouds and building their own clouds. And then there's information from us inside out, building these clouds. So we have a mixture of those. And as those clouds build, and this is happening at 400 billion actions and faster, we estimate as scientists, it's fast, we make a copy. Our mind copies that and puts it into the brain as a tree-like structure. That's why I've got these trees. So that's made of proteins and chemicals, and that's the networks that we all hear about. It's in the neurons and whatever. So it's basically as a cloud is copied and put into the brain, a neuron grows dendrites to hold that information. So dendrites, which are the tops of neurons, are where the copies of the clouds that the mind has made grow onto. So they come from, they are stimulated. Does that make sense? They are activated. The catalyst is the copy of the cloud makes a copy. The mind makes a copy of the little cloud, puts it in the brain. There's an electrochemical, neurochemical reaction, and proteins form, and the proteins grow into tree-like structures on the top of neurons. And that's housing the thought. And the more we think, the more drops in the cloud, the more branches. More drops in the cloud, more branches. So it looks like a tree in the brain made of proteins. Then the mind also makes copies of that in a little hedge kind of shape, which then go in through the cell, inside the actual cell, into the in little protein. I don't want to get too technical, but like little hedges right inside the cell. And that's also memory. So it's another version of memory. So we've got these, and then it's all linked. So we have a world wide web because we have 37 to 100 trillion cells. We have a neuron can have however many details we put into our thought. That's how many branches we're going to grow. I mean, this thing is massive. Right. It's a web, and that's one thought. One thought is a massive web. Mm-hmm. So, and we're building these all the time. We're brilliant, and we're building these networks. But if we're building networks that are regret-driven or anger-driven or whatever, so if I'm now stuck in that, if only I had done this and gone there at that time and done this, I would have fixed this person or helped that person or saved that person or saved that portion of the business, that is creating a right down to your toes, just full of this web.
You feel it everywhere.
You feel it everywhere. And if you don't deal with it, it's pounding and hammering. So upward and downward counterfactuals will tend to build a negative thing. So even the downward one, if I think the negative, I can get really depressed and think, well, I should have done that, and that bad thing would have happened. But we can get so stuck in the bad thing, even though it doesn't have as much impact as the positive, because the positive makes us feel worse about not doing it. Right. You've got to have a balance of both. So what we need to do after that long explanation, and this explanation kind of works for all the different things we're going to talk about, like how it builds into the networks. What we need to do with things like regret is realize that the regret is something we can learn from. This is good basic stuff that we've heard before. But I can look my regret in the face. So first of all, I must see my regret as something that is positive, which is interesting because if it's positive, why is it positive? Because it's giving me data. It's data. I'm data driven. So it's, what data is it giving me? Well, it's giving me something that's obviously something that worries me. It's something that's either guilt driven or it's something I can learn from. So it's data. So what can I learn from that? So the first thing you do with the regret is identify, is it an upward or a downward one? It's most likely an upward, because things will feel better, make us, if I did it this way, I would have had a better outcome. So it makes me feel worse. So the first thing is to face on and say, hey, you know what? It's okay to feel regret. I'm feeling this regret. I'm going to honor this regret because it gives me data. I'm not going to honor the regret because of what it does to my network. I'm going to honor the regret because of its data. If I face that data, I can then take that data and I can make a decision. I'm going to stay here and get more depressed and more anxious, and my life's just going to I'm just going to go down a rabbit hole of terrible stuff. Or I can say, what did I learn? The good old fashioned, what did I learn? Or what did I learn what not to do? Like Thomas Edison said, after inventing the light bulb and after 1,000+ trials. And a reporter asked him, well, how do you feel about your failures? And he said, well, they're not failures. I know 1,000 things that don't work. And it stuck with me so much. So you can say to yourself, okay, I honor this regret. This is the name of the regret. You spend 5 seconds, not more, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 10 seconds max, honoring that regret by just looking at it as information and say, okay, now, what did I learn what not to do? What can I take into my future? What is something, and you could journal this, you can write this down, you can do this quickly in your head, you can do it in the moment, you can do a quick one in the moment to get you to the next moment and then come back to it that evening or the next day. If you see it's a pattern. So in the book, what I have are tables and charts and lots of, like this exercise I'm talking about now, I laid out so that you can actually track it. If you find it's a pattern and that you constantly go into that kind of zone of regret, with only work-related stuff, well, then you can do a 63-day cycle to work on regret for that kind of thing. If it's a pattern maybe with a family member, then you can work. If it's a pattern in your life that it's touching all areas, then you really do need to spend the time and do the work of going through the healing journey of 63 days of rewiring and building a new habit. But at least you can in the moment catch it and still carry on for the day. So that's just, there's more things you can do with regret, but yeah. I think you've got the idea.
What you're offering, of course, is help in a hurry. So there's these quick hitters, basically.
Quick hitters for now. How do I get myself under control now? I'll deal with the big stuff when I've got.
And sometimes it's just a very subtle change in thinking, like a little perspective shift. Like, for example, when you talked about in the book, and this really stood out for me, the downward counterfactual and how, and there's a lot of research indicating that that's more beneficial. It's not saying that it's good necessarily, but it's better than upward, which is like that regret. If I would have done this, things would have been so much better, right? But downward counterfactual, and a good example would be something like, this situation happened and I'm dealing with something that I regret. I feel bad about this, but because of this thing happening, I'm going to choose to look at it like this. I have regret, but this saved me from a future bad thing happening, because this situation, even though I wouldn't want this to happen, it gave me something that I can work on right now that's going to help me to not deal with this in the future.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's you want to take that data and you want to add that to your resilience, and that's wisdom. That's gaining knowledge. That's what have you learned. We're here to love. We're here to learn. We're here to grow as humans. So any regret, when you make it work for you, you are taking that fork in the road of not going down the wrong way, but actually taking that information as the data and saying, I've now learned something that I can use in the future, something that I don't want to do. I've grown as a person. I've learned a lesson. I'm better for it, even though you may not feel it. Look for the silver lining. There's always a silver lining.
I've got a couple of great examples. All right. So recently, I know someone who lost a loved one. They lost a family member, and they were feeling a sense of regret, which was, I should have picked up the phone more often, right? Which many people experience that.
Yeah, very common.
And just being really hard on themselves for a time being. And over time, number one, you share this. It's okay to not be okay and to feel that feeling, because that regret can offer you an opportunity
to grow.
And what I was able to do, fortunately, was to help to reframe a little bit. Of course, so this happened. We can't change it. That's the thing. It's like you stay in the regret so long and play that movie as if it's going to change the past. But okay, so this happened. You wish you would have picked up the phone more often. Who can you pick up the phone for now?
There we go. Right? That's a brilliant example. Who can you spend
more time with right now, and so that you don't have this feeling again? And for many of us, again, we usually have many other people in our lives who love us, and to be more proactive and to really invest in those relationships and do those small things that maybe you feel like you have regret that you didn't do previously.
That's beautiful. And I love that. And I would add to that, I love the fact that you brought in, reach out to someone else. Yes, just to emphasize, I agree totally. You've given a beautiful example there. You can pick up the phone and you can help someone else. You can also tell you the big thing that happens with regret is guilt and shame and self-blame. And that in itself can become a whole terrible cycle. And it's so it's really important in dealing with help in a hurry in a moment is to start by, and I'm going to emphasize what I've said already, what you've already emphasized me saying, it's okay to be okay. It's okay, honor that regret. It's okay to feel that. And even if you do feel a bit of guilt, honor that too, because that little bit of guilt was what you maybe needed in that moment just to deal with that particular situation. But you're not going to stay there. The big key thing with all of this help in the hurry stuff, all of the work that I'm trying to help people with in their mind is don't push away what you're going through. Face it full on. Like our body sweats, like we vomit when we're sick, like we have high fevers, you're getting it out. When we're in a society where it's kind of, people do talk about things. There's a big emphasis on awareness compared to previous years where things were suppressed, but they're getting it out and then they don't do anything else with it. So what I'm saying is get it out, honor it, but now do something with it. You've got to have the learning. You've got to take the data and you have to use it, as you said, with a family member. Pick up a phone and phone another family member, or look at how you have grown as a person. Look at what does that guilt mean? Why do you feel the guilt? What do you need? What's missing in your life that you feel that you... So, be curious, grow. Don't get stuck there. Don't get stuck in that loop. Go deep, develop insight, tap into your as soon as you go deep, as soon as you get curious and ask those questions about the why, how can I use this data? What is the silver lining? And at first you may not see the silver lining, but there is always a silver lining because you learn something in that moment that someone else will benefit from. And it's all about connection and helping other people. That really is, we are wired for love. That's what we are as humans. So we can take those experiences and turn them around. And that's why what I meant by saying we can make regret work for us if we catch it, analyze it, and move forward.
Yeah, I love this. Another downward counterfactual that I just thought about, like a specific example, is if somebody, which, we've got people who are tuning in and, just living a fitness and active lifestyle, some stuff's going to happen. You might experience an injury, whatever the case might be. And when an individual is injured, or even when we're sick, we tend to have some depression come on, right? And this is just a chemistry thing that's associated with both of it.
It's also a normal response,
but getting stuck in it is the issue. And so, maybe somebody has, a flare up of a back issue, for example, and a downward counterfactual would be, I regret this. I regret that, the situation happened, but this is giving me an opportunity. It's telling me I'm grateful because it's preventing me from something potentially worse that could have happened if I wasn't taking care of myself like I know I need to be taking care of myself.
So good. You see, you learned something. You took the data and you turned it around. Instead of regretting, why did I do that? Why did I do that? You actually took that around, turned that around, reframed that, reconceptualized that, and maybe you find another form of exercise that actually is what you needed because you weren't working a certain other group of muscles or whatever.
Yeah. So, and these tools are always available. They're built in. We have them.
We have them. We've got to be careful of just staying stuck in the conscious loop. So we've got 3 levels of mind. We've got the conscious mind, the subconscious, and the non-conscious. Not unconscious. Unconscious is when you're asleep or knocked out or under anesthesia. We've got to remember conscious, subconscious, non-conscious. The non-conscious is the biggest part. It's huge. It's infinite, beyond present, past, and future. Absorbs everything around us. It is can have multiple thoughts being managed at the same time. It's huge, massive. It's on our side. It's our best friend. It is our wisdom. It's phenomenal. And all of us, that's who we are. That's at the core. It's our true self. And that's what we need to tap into. We've got to work to find the wisdom because everything we need is inside of us. The conscious mind is brilliant. It's fantastic, but it's limited. It's a chaotic, messy toddler learning, decision-making, choice. And it's very, you obviously there's choice in all levels of mind, but it's a choice that's very based on how my brain and body feel. It's very physically driven in its choices. So therefore it's not reliable. It can never work alone. Like you cannot let a toddler just run all over the place and they'll get hurt. So you, like a parent guides a toddler and a teenager and you're always helping your children or you're helping people, whatever. But especially a toddler is a good example. Our conscious mind needs the wisdom of the non-conscious. So it has another level, the subconscious. And the subconscious is like a waiting room. It's in between the two. to give people a feeling for the size of these and the ability. The conscious mind is awake when you're awake. It operates at about 2,000 actions per second, which is about the amount of one conversation, about 100 bits of information in any one moment. The non-conscious can handle an infinite number of conversations. A conversation, yes, we're having a conversation, but you can also see a conversation as an experience, a thought. So conscious mind can handle one, an unconscious infinite. So in this moment, you and I are having one conversation based on one general thought that we bring in a lot of detail, and it's stimulating other thoughts, but it's around a cluster of it's around a concept. The non-conscious is not limited to this one conversation. It's drawing on a million different things, and it's putting ideas into the subconscious, and the subconscious can have around about 4 to 7 conversations, so it can hold about 4 to 7 thoughts at once. So as you and I are talking, we're stimulating each other's non-conscious. The non-conscious is then putting into the subconscious what we are going to say next. Mm-hmm. So and that pops up. Now that's in this conversation. In life, that happens all the time too. The non-conscious is searching around for that regret cycle, that toxic looking tree.
Because we're having conversations with ourselves.
We're having conversations with ourselves, and those conversations are based on our experiences, and our experiences become thoughts made of memories, and so the non-conscious mind scans and it looks for the toxic ones, and it puts the ones that are the most disruptive to Caroline in this moment, to Shawn in this moment, to every listener and viewer in this moment, puts those in order of priority into the subconscious, into the waiting room, triages them literally from the most important, most disruptive to the least disruptive that you need to deal with in this moment. It also puts the good stuff in. So it puts stuff like a great conversation, a great memory, a great whatever, because we need to also focus on those to build our resilience. So a lot of the techniques in Help in a Hurry, this book, are ones that I recommend people get familiar with and practice when things are going well. So the network is already built in. So when you're in that emergency situation, when someone angers you, when you find yourself people pleasing, when the regret jumps up, you don't have to get sucked in and fall down that whole pathway. You can, it's going to happen, the regret's going to happen, but instead of it wiring in a toxic way, you immediately catch it and direct how it's going to wire in that moment. And so it's good to be proactive and practice and understand and know about these in advance. So the subconscious mind then holds these 4 to 7 in any one moment, and it sends it up as signals. And when we self-regulate, when we live a mind-managed life, we are self-regulating. And that means I'm listening to the signals. And those signals, there's 4 categories. It's my emotions, which really hit us in the face. It's where am I feeling that emotion in my body? So it's our bodily sensation. It's our behaviors, what we're doing and saying in the moment, and how we're doing and saying it, and our perspectives, how we're looking at life, our attitude. And that's the 4 categories of signals. They're not diseases, because emotions would include things like depression and anxiety. We told depression and anxiety are diseases. They're not diseases, they're signals. ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity. It's basically, it's a behavior. You're batting to pay attention, you're kind of hyperactive. It's not a disorder, it's a set of behaviors that maybe have become extreme. So any of these can become extreme, but they work together as a team. And what we need to do is always look at the grouping and the category and pay attention to those signals. So basically we have these 4 signals that come up, and those signals are coming from what the non-conscious is placed into the conscious mind. So for example, as we're talking now, we're going to both have the non-conscious putting things in our subconscious to guide our interaction. And we're listening, both because you're listening and I'm listening as we listen to each other, and as I'm talking, I'm being guided by that information, and it's coming up as signals. So the emotion is I'm excited, I'm positive, I can feel my body's like, hyper, it's tense in a good sense. The way I'm speaking, it's passionate, and my attitude, my perception is I love this stuff. So that's the signal that's then bringing up the data, and then I'm paying attention to the data, which is the content. So that's just to give you kind of an example, and I translate that into regret, for example, that we were speaking about. Those signals could be coming up as anxiety, could be the emotion, gut ache for the bodily sensation. I'm feeling like my gut's sore, or maybe one starts sweating or whatever. The behaviors are withdrawing maybe, or irritability. The perception is, I'm just away. I'm just such a mess. I can't do this. I've messed up so badly. I'm useless. That's the perception. Now those are just signals. they don't give you enough information. You need to find the data that they're attached to. So my signals I described just now, if I just said those signals, I wouldn't give any information. I'm giving words, I'm explaining things. So in other words, what I'm trying to say, signals are attached to data. And that data, those are thoughts with memories. And when we learn to self-regulate in the 63 seconds, when we face that regret on and we say, okay, it's an upward counterfactual, you don't even have to label it, but it's honor it by saying it. I am regretting this. Specify it, lay it out. You're actually allowing it to come into your conscious mind. And as soon as you are conscious of it, the most amazing neurophysiology happens. You weaken that thought. So thoughts have power, but they don't have to control us. If it's a good thought, control away. With full permission to control away when it's a healthy thought. But a negative thought, we do not want that to control us. And that's why we have signals. So when a signal comes up and tells us this is something, I'm feeling all these things that are not great, it's disruptive. I must pay attention. Now, in the moment, those 4 signals, especially when it's negative stuff like regret, it's very overwhelming. And that's why we need a go-to to disrupt the potential toxic cycle in that moment, in that 63 seconds. So when you get that call, when you get that text, whatever, you want to be able to catch it in that moment. And that's why I say, for example, like the regret thing, you can just face it straight on, say it, name it, and say, it's okay to not feel, it's okay to feel this way. I'm going to, and there's another way of doing, I can look at this differently. What have I learned from it? You can train yourself in advance to ask yourself those 4 questions and say, I'll deal with this later. It's okay. So you're telling yourself, your mind, your wise mind is telling that toddler mind, it's okay. I know you feel like this. I'm honoring that, but it's not going to help you. Let's move forward. See what I'm saying? Yeah. So we can give some other examples when you touch on the other topics I know you wanted to touch on.
Of course, as you just mentioned, a well-managed mind, training yourself in advance. I love that quote that you don't rise to the level of the situation, or you don't rise to the level of your expectations. You fall to the level of your training.
That's
right?
Very good, yeah.
And so when things are going to happen, and how quickly can you be able to lean in and access that mind management, have that habitually kind of built in. There was something specifically in this chapter, and it was a great summation of how to approach this. And with regret, don't worry about making the right decision. Make the decision right. Right? So whatever decision that you made. Good
job. You remembered that perfectly.
Yeah,
wow,
yeah. And we have that power. It's just how quickly, and can you train yourself to get to that place of power to whatever the decision that you made, how can you make this decision the right decision?
Exactly. And that statement is something that you're going to train yourself to do. It's not going to, so the first time you apply some of these techniques, you're going to forget what to do, and you're going to find yourself, whatever, fumbling around, but everyone will remember something. They'll remember it's okay to honor that regret, because that's not something that you would normally do. So it's to get to make just make the decision to do something in that moment instead of just rolling with it. We've made people aware now that you don't have to live in that regret cycle. You can do something about it, and that's
Yeah. With you, we talked a little bit about this. We opened the door to it earlier. It was an A word.
Anger.
It was anger. So this is something that, and somebody just said this yesterday. I was just in a conversation with a very smart, successful, very experienced physician. And she was just like, I feel like people are just angrier now. Right. And I was like, I see that.
Yeah.
And so what do we do? How do we get some help in a hurry when we feel like I'm just so angry? I'm angry all the time. I'm just so angry. What can we do?
Anger is an emotion. It's one of the 4 signals. And when it comes out in the way that we're seeing so much of it, we were just in Paris recently, and there were a couple of people on the street, and they're just yelling and getting it out. And now on the one hand, they get it out and then it's over. But it leaves an impact.
Were they getting it out in French?
Yeah, they're just yelling, and they have these little words, and whatever. They just in the middle of the street. If someone irritates them, they'll just shout at you, and it's just that's kind of what they do. It's in their culture, but then it's over. So they get it out and they move on. So I'm not saying go and yell at someone in the middle of the street, but essentially anger isn't a negative emotion unless you make it a negative emotion. The big thing is that every signal is positive because every signal carries data. And emotions are a signal, and anger is one of those emotions. The problem with anger is that doctor's quite right. There is definitely an increase of anger, which is not surprising considering how we are not allowed to really deal with our stuff. So we've moved from suppressing the sort of boomer generation and the Gen X to a certain extent. We've moved from that to the other side of the ditch where it's pour it all out and label it, and then what? So it's kind of, you've crashed the plane. So you've done your meditation, you've done your, I feel this, now what? And that is creating it's this release, and then you're shoving back down. So what you're doing is you're bringing that thought up, you're opening it up, and you're talking about it, but you're not actually moving forward. So it closes up, moves back into your unconscious, more disruptive than it was before. Now, if you keep doing that, or you suppress, you maybe don't do the meditation or the neurophysiology or the breathing or the exercise or something to prepare to control the neurophysiology, you may not be doing that. Or you may be doing that without the talking about how I feel, etc., etc. You may be doing one or two or none. So you're suppressing. But if you do one, if you just meditate, if you meditate plus talk about your feelings, if you do neither, if you suppress, all of those are not healthy on their own. They're incomplete. And anything incomplete becomes a living force that is generating the wrong kind of energy, and it's swirling, and eventually it's like a whole closet that you constantly shove stuff in. And, when guests come and you just, quickly shove it all in there, and one day it's so full, just everything falls out and it crashes, or the volcano eventually explodes. And that's what this anger that we're seeing, this sort of anger that's now become distorted and disruptive, because generally anger is an emotion that makes you act. It makes you take action. It makes you move forward. Something, this is not right. I'm going to fix this. This is that, that abuse or that thing that person said. These are not good things. But it's when it becomes, where it turns and it becomes that someone else is hurt. When another person is hurt, when you're hurting another person and you're hurting yourself and it's chaotic, that's when it's slipped off to the other side. And that creates, that I mentioned earlier on it, in terms of blood pressure and heart. It's one of the distorted anger is one of the quickest ways of creating cardiovascular disease, even quicker than eating the wrong kinds of food, because of the fact that it has such a chemical reaction with the kinds of, it throws, all chemicals are good in our body, but when they're in the wrong quantities, which incorrect anger or distorted anger will do, it then puts our heart at risk, because now we've got this massive of chemicals flowing around. We've got this very disruptive energy pattern coming from our mind into our brain, making copies and adding to it. So it's just this a lot of stuff coming in, and then it explodes. So it's the understanding, the way people move forward is hearing what we're saying and understanding that a lot of our current day's way of dealing with stuff is creating this boiling anger in people, where we partially deal with stuff and then we shove it down and it's worse than before. So we're seeing pure meditation alone, for example, backfiring. We're seeing, just talking about our feelings, backfiring and leading to lots of angry outbursts. We're seeing the overwhelm from social media, constant stimulation, which doesn't allow enough deep thinking. We are designed for deep thinking. And deep thinking means I tap into my unconscious multiple times a day, and we're on our cell phones every 4 to 6 seconds, which doesn't allow us to deep think. That will create this chemical chaos that will lead to anger. So it's kind of a combination of those three things that lead to distorted anger. Good anger is always controlled. It always has an ending, and it always generates something positive. So if your anger isn't controlled and it's not progressive and it's not creating something positive, it's distorted anger. And so if you find that that's a pattern in your life, or you find that maybe, I am talking about my feelings but not doing anything about them, or I am just meditating and I'm not telling you to stop, I'm just saying complete the cycle. You can't just meditate, you can't just talk about your feelings, you also have to reconceptualize them. You have to embrace, process and reconceptualize, which is the whole neurocycle system I've developed, which is basically mind management. You can't suppress either. You can't just keep on social media and expect not to get angry. You can't suppress your grief. If crying, for example, grief, when you cry, hormones come out in those tears. And those hormones have built up in your body because of the grief, which is overwhelming. So your body generates more chemicals for your body, and those chemicals have to get out. If they stay in, they actually can make you feel sick and can make your grief worse. So when we cry, we release those chemicals, and then we raise things like endorphins, as you know a lot about, in order to help create an anandamide, and you get a burst of chemicals and oxytocin that kind of rebalance.
I know many people have experienced that. Like they cry and they feel better.
They feel better. We need to be free to cry. You don't mean we all cry different ways and whatever. But it's those
and
kinds of...
the chemistry changes in those tears based on why we're crying.
Exactly. It's different chemistry each
so
time.
Powerful.
And we're supposed to get that out. It doesn't mean you have to walk around crying all the time, but a couple of tears, as I said, it's different. We all have our own way of crying and different patterns and different situations. But essentially that the anger is when it's distorted, we've got to get it out, and it's got to be progressive in a way. So a way of dealing with anger in the moment is, once again, I'm giving knowledge, we giving knowledge. That's why in every chapter of the book, there's a little bit of this explanation that we're doing, and then a technique with charts and whatever to help people to practice dealing with it. So if that is an issue, if you have an anger that's progressive and it doesn't lead to, it's disruptive, it's chaotic, then one of the things that works really well is to create a gap. And a little gap is the neurophysiology of that emotion of anger is very strong in your body. It's going to have when it's disruptive, it has, as I mentioned, the catecholamines and the different hormones. It disrupts a lot of hormones, not just one. But I specifically said, I cannot say that word, catecholamines, because those go straight to the heart. And that's why we see people dropping down dead. People that are constantly angry seem at the prime of their life, but they're always reacting in anger in the office or something, just drop down dead from a heart attack. Angry people drop down dead from heart attacks. So this is very real. Also, a lot of GI problems, people that have a lot of anger that they don't release, it accumulates in tremendous GI problems. So those are a lot of other areas, but those are two major areas that get affected. So
let's say that I'm fucking angry.
I'm
angry.
Yeah.
And I just can't let it go. I can't get out of this anger. What would you tell me to do?
What I tell you to do is to create a gap. I tell you to count 2 to 6, which is 10 seconds. So you're gonna breathe in for 2, you're gonna hold for 2, and you're gonna breathe out for 6 counts. And you're gonna do that 6 times. So it's in for 2, hold for 2, out for 2, and I'll explain the science behind it in a moment. And you're gonna do it 6 times. So you've done 2, so let's do another 4. In for 2, hold for 2, out for 6. For the balance of 3, I want you to actually, when you breathe in, I want you to say let in your mind. And then when you breathe out, go in your mind. Okay. So in 1, 2, hold 1, 2, and you're saying let. And now with the 6 counts, go. Now the last 2, in 2, hold in 2, hold 2, saying let, out 6, saying go. Last one, in 1, 2, hold 1, 2, saying let, and then go. 6 counts, saying go. That is 60 seconds, and it's completely changed your neurophysiology.
Can I say this?
Yes, go for it.
I felt better after the first one.
And sometimes you can just do one, and it's enough. But so that 60 seconds, that 63 seconds is key in rewiring. But if you get it right in 10 seconds, fantastic. Then,
I had to try to drum up something to be angry about, but
I'm sure we can all think of some. Yeah, there you go. You're not an angry. You control your anger. Then the other thing you can do is use I statements, because our natural reaction when we're angry is to say, "You have done that again. You didn't listen. You did this. You that. They that." So we immediately, and you can look at my body movements. The minute I take that anger and I do that, it comes out in these very vigorous, hard, and that's really bad for your heart. I mean, just doing that in demonstration, I didn't feel very good. And if you look at someone who's in that state of anger, they're doing that. All the blood vessels, everything. I mean, everything's just not good. So using a you statement in a state of anger is bad. Use an I statement. So breathe and then say, okay, I am feeling angry because that person did this or they did that. And you say it out loud or write it down or say it in your head. It's phenomenal how it'll calm you down. And even if you have to say it over a couple of times, you can, even if you do that for a full 60 seconds and just add detail on. So you create that space for yourself. So you could do three little of the breath things and the other 30 seconds you could say a statement. There's a lot you can do in 60 seconds. That's why I say practice. Work out a little formula. But that combination, it completely breaks down and gets you into that space where you can tap into your wisdom. Every time we get stuck in regret or anger or any of these sort of top 18 things that I've identified from surveys and research and clinical practice that are kind of the things that really, there's a lot more, but these are the top ones that catch people. Anytime that you're in any of one of those, we can learn to catch those in that 63 seconds and redirect what's going to happen in the next hour and the next, and then you start training yourself and you start retraining those circuits and that kind of thing. You can catch it. You can catch it in 63 seconds.
Right. This is, again, it's mind management. We've got
it's mind management.
The instant help, right, with the breathing, but we've got to do the work.
We've got to do the work.
Right, because we're going to have an emotional place that we kind of live and hang out because of the branches, because of what we've grown accustomed to.
Exactly.
Right. And so it's being able to fortify, support the trees that we want to grow and to allow the other trees to kind of be pruned away and to dissolve.
Exactly. They deconstruct and reconstruct. So they never completely go away because our stories never change. Yeah. But we can change what they look like inside of us. So quite rightly what you say, they deconstruct, they get small, and then we rebuild. We can't just pull one out. We can't just replace a negative thought with a positive thought. We can't just take an angry thought out and pop in a positive, which is very much sort of the CBT affirmation. Those, you've got to do the work first and then you can do that. You've got to first work through the process and then you can use that as a practice tool, as a technique. Very quickly also what happens if we don't manage it, any of these things, we get stuck in the conscious mind, toddler mind without the parent and the brain, mind, body. So we get stuck in the conscious mind, brain, body loop, but we don't tap into the non-conscious. So, and the non-conscious is where wisdom is. And that's not good. That means you've let your toddler run out in the road. That's literally what's happening. And we know what will happen if that happens. Or you've let your toddler go turn on the stove, or you've let your toddler throw their toys all over the place or something like that. That's what we do. So that's why it's so vital that we learn to recognize I'm in regret, let me catch. And as soon as I catch, I get insight, because we lose tremendous insight when we're in anger or regret or any of these situations, people pleasing. We don't have insight. We don't think deeply. We don't have good cognitive fluency. So these little techniques that you can do in 63 seconds take you into the depths. And it may not be very deep the first moment, but as you practice, you learn to get very deep very quickly. So that's what's happening.
I want to ask you about this because, again, you address pretty much all the common feelings, problems, what people are immersed in today, whether it's anger or regret or not feeling like I'm not happy enough, right? We have a culture that's always promoting, you should be happy, right? And so you talk about this as well. And one of them is my inner critic won't let up, right? Just constantly criticizing themselves. And they got this inner critic, this voice in our heads. What is that voice?
That is us being so harsh on ourselves, and it's coming from you, exactly what you just said, our productivity culture, where we have you've got to be happy, you've got to be productive, you've got to have your goals, you've got to have your vision board. If you're sad, there's something wrong with you. Why aren't you happy all the time? Seek after that goal of happiness. Positive psychology, toxic positivity, all these things what are you doing? Is every moment filled? It's like it's the guilt when you're not working. The French, excuse the example, but they got it right. They take 2 hours lunch break every day. And you'll see them between 12 and 2. They're in the park, they're drinking their wine, they're having their lunch, and then they go back to work. And after work, they connect and they talk. I think, honestly, Paris has got the culture. They've got this thing really down in terms of that sort of thing. We are, so when it comes to the inner critic, once again, a bit like the regret and the anger, all these things, when I don't manage it, it gets out of hand. So when I look, when we live in a zeitgeist that is so externally focused, which you also spoke about in the beginning, that has an external locus of goal control, where that's what we've got to be like, that productive, that happy, that it's so unrealistic. That's why goal setting is also a bit dangerous. because we set one goal and that kind of thing. When we live in that kind of society, we're constantly comparing. Social media, FOMO, you mentioned it earlier on. We scroll through, and even though we know it's curated, why don't I look like that? Why don't I have as many followers? We all fallen into that trap. So we've got so much data coming at us that at such a fast speed, and we're not taking time to actually stand back and say, hey, look how well Shawn's doing. That's amazing. I'm so excited for him. I can't do what Shawn's doing, but I can do what I'm doing. So what can I learn? Enhancement. We don't do that. We're so caught up in this. We think, oh, wow, look what Shawn's doing. Oh, wow, I'm so stupid. Why can't I do that? And you be hostile with ourselves, and we start criticizing and it's coming from a lot of letting the outside control us instead of getting to know who we truly are. When we spend time in mind management, when we spend time stopping that flow in the 63 seconds and learning how to dive deep over the 63 days, we start realizing I can celebrate Shawn, not be jealous of Shawn. And if I am a little jealous of Shawn, I'm not going to hit myself over the head and be hostile and self-critical. I'm going to say, yes, I am jealous of Shawn or whatever. I'm just giving some dumb example. But why? There's a reason. So what data can I get from there? It's okay, Caroline. It's okay, Shawn, to be jealous, whatever. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay. But what can I learn from it? What is it telling me? And that then shifts the self-criticism. Oh, I'm jealous again. I feel so guilty. I'm so bad. I'm useless. I can't do what they're doing. And now I'm jealous on top of it. And that we're busy, and then social media, and then we run, and then I've got to be happy and I'm not happy. It's hitting us in every direction. We've got to stop the flow. We've got to stop that flow, and we've got to stop ourselves. So how do we stop ourselves in the moment? A couple of simple things that you can do. And the one is kind of silly, but imagine an ant, a tiny little ant. But first of all, imagine a big red ant next to it. So those red ants that hurt. And imagine they're on a stage, and the curtain opens, and there's this red ant, and there's not one, there's a lot. And you're standing in the stage, and there's a lot of red ants, and they're biting you. And this is you attacking yourself. Now move off the stage. You've got the power to get rid of those red ants, but you've got to get off the stage. So you get off the stage, you sit in the audience, and you watch, and you sit back, and you say, okay, so you bit me. And then what was that self-criticism? I'm not as good as Shawn. What's that one saying? You bit me. I bit you because you're saying, and whatever and as you say them, they turn from a red ant into a little black ant. Eventually there's just one little black ant there. And eventually there's no ants. And so you're watching, it's such a simple exercise. You can do it really fast, but it takes that power out of that self-criticism, and it makes you stop for a moment and think, okay, let me be curious. What's the data? Always. What's the data? What's the silver lining? What is this telling me? How can I grow? My whole purpose as a human is to grow and to learn and to operate in love. So it's okay to not be okay, because most of us are not okay anyway, and that's normal. That's part of being human. So I can now learn from that to grow and to be more at peace. What we should be seeking is peace, not happiness. That's a great exercise for self-criticism. There's others. I've got lots of little fun things like that to do, but they work.
That's so powerful, because you're taking something that is just floating around, right? These feelings that we have, and you're concentrating it into, kind of personifying it as an ant.
Yeah.
Like you're giving it
small.
something, some substance. And also it's small.
I can stamp on it.
Right?
I can, yeah.
And, again, so many of these thoughts are just overwhelming, but they're fleeting. They're floating around, and we don't really
we let them create chaos.
Identify them.
Exactly.
Right?
We don't identify them. We just leave them as a swirling, chaotic mass, and we don't have to. We can order them. We can put them on the stage. We can all put them in that box. We can order. Our mind-brain-body connection is very ordered. As a understanding about food and exercise, we've got to have order. We've got to have routine. That is our mind-brain-body connection. It's everything's organized and clustered. What we do with our toddler mind, our conscious mind, which is so powerful, but we don't use it properly. It works well when it connects with an unconscious, when it listens to the signal from the subconscious, but we let it get chaotic. Another thing you can do with the ant and the self-criticism is you can say, okay, you know what, thanks for sharing that with me. I appreciate it, but you know what, and I'm curious about why, and I'm going to find the why, and I recognize I'm not going to find the why now. It's probably going to take me 63 days, but thanks, I don't want that now. And close the curtain. End of the show, leave the theater. And move on with your day. It's those things that you visualize. It's very, very powerful. Little exercises that you can just get you through into the next moment. And you can do all of that in 63 seconds.
We started this off with me saying that we need some help. And we do. And this isn't something that is just going to be, snap your fingers and everything is fixed.
No,
it's
not a
about
quick
doing the
fix.
work, but also it is so comforting to know that we have solutions in the moment. We can feel better now. We can rise to the occasion now. We can get through the day. And that was really the premise of this book from what I took from it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because so many of us just feel like, I can't even make it through the day. I'm struggling.
Exactly.
And so giving us these mental prescriptions for us to use is so valuable. And if you could, can you share what people can expect when they pick up a copy of Help in a Hurry?
Oh, absolutely. And I love how you said that. You literally quoted my chapter 18 at the beginning there. Thank you for reading the book so intensely. Beautifully said. So yeah, it's short chapters covering those main areas like the jealousy and the anger and the self-criticism and the intrusive thoughts, all the sort of top 18 that has come from surveys and clinical research and application and so on. And it's short explanation of what it is, a little bit of the science, very simple. And then there's techniques. There's 5 or 6 techniques for each one. Like on pressure, there's 7 different types of pressure cooker points. Like, for example, I didn't get X done. And can I quickly explain?
Absolutely, please.
I didn't get X done.
This feeling, so help, I'm under pressure.
I'm under pressure. Yeah, help, I'm under. Each chapter starts, it's help, I'm under pressure, or help, I'm angry, or help, I'm so tired all the time, or help, I'm people pleasing. And then it explains what it is with a bit of science. And then there's techniques, there's charts, you can download them. There's a QR code. They can download the charts and they can fill those charts in. The idea of the charts is to take the techniques you are charted, is for you to then apply that and proactively learn those techniques so that and also to track patterns, to see if you've got patterns. And then if you've got patterns, then I recommend they do the neurocycle, which is, we've got it in an app, I've got it in the book, and the QR codes are in there, and there's discounts and whatever. There's a whole lot of pre-order bonuses to help people to understand this as well. So basically, like one of the most common pressure cooker points, and think of a pressure cooker. It's a great way of cooking because the steam makes things cook quicker, but it's got to be set in a certain way. And if there's too much steam, it explodes and makes songs and the thing pops. That's what pressure does to us. Pressure is good for us. Pressure makes us move forward. Pressure creates positive stress in us, like anger creates positive. All these things, they're actually all positive if we know how to use them. As we know, what pressure is, a lot of things coming at us, that's why I said that the first chapter was pressure, because all of these things create a sense of pressure. If I understand how to use that pressure, I can keep the pressure cooker from exploding. And so there's 7 main ones. There's about 13, but I found that there were 7 top ones that came out. And one of the top ones of those 7 is, I didn't get X done. Mm-hmm. So this is in our highly productive sort of pressurized society, is very often, and I know I fell prey to this, that's why it really was something, and I still have to catch myself, but I would get into bed. I've been married to Mac for 37 years. We just celebrated our 37th wedding anniversary, and I think for the first 10 years of our life, I would get into bed, and even now I don't do it often anymore, but I'd get into bed at night and I'd say, I didn't get this done. And I couldn't sleep. I became so toxic. Then regret followed. And then I felt my chest felt like it was going to burst. I got angry and frustrated. So, it kind of, and I just couldn't sleep. And eventually Mac turned around. He's so good at reconceptualizing. And like sometimes I think most of the words, a lot of the wisdom is coming from his brilliance. But he turned around, he said to me, instead of saying what I didn't get done, why didn't you say what you did get done? I think he was just so tired of me keeping him awake. And he said, like, why didn't you say what you did do? And I said, I didn't do anything. He said, oh, come on. And he started listing, let's look at what you've done. So that's the idea there is, that I didn't get X done. Sure, that's okay. But there's a chart. You can fill in a chart and you can you can go through. So the first thing, there's like a chart with 4 little steps that you go through. The first thing is to acknowledge what you didn't get done. Always honor that. You've heard me say throughout this interview, honor that whatever it is that you're going through. And the honor is not for the thing, it's for the data that it provides. So write it down. Then look at, okay, how's that making you feel in this moment? Remember, this is quick, we're not doing it. So how do you feel in this moment? How's this making you feel? So it's making me feel, as I described, awful, frustrated, whatever. And then you're going to say, okay, well, how am I going to do a mind shift? The concept of a mind shift. How can I shift my mind around this? So the mind shift there was, well, what have I done? And as soon as you start looking at what you have done and you list that down, I actually did all of those things. Okay, so what you didn't get done, can you make a plan? So it's to get it out, acknowledge how you feel, and then do the mind shift.
Yeah.
which is look at it from a different angle and then come up with some sort of little exercise or technique. Okay, well, I can do that tomorrow that I didn't do today. And that was really cool what I did today. And immediately it will calm you down. So that's an example.
Shout out to Mac, who's here in the studio, by the way, being able to handle that situation, because
so well, he did.
As soon as you said what you said, which I'm going to repeat it here, I thought about my wife. All right. So when you're saying, of course, and acknowledging and honoring that, like, I didn't get such and such done. Well, what did you get done? And you saying, I didn't get anything done, right? And just going to the extreme. And that's one of the things I'll talk about.
Black and white thinking.
Let's talk about how it is, but don't make it worse than it is.
Exactly.
You know, like, so, and a lot of times when you're in that space, you don't want to hear it, right? And so sometimes it might have to come from a patient voice or something even, you know, outside of that. Which what I've learned is really helpful for my wife is listening to you, or listening to somebody who's a guest or a friend or something like that, who's usually telling them something, telling her something, of course, that, you know, and I just sit there, and over time, of course, I've just been more like, yeah, you know, like, instead of me being like, you know, I told you that, but just allowing her to have those revelations. And again, just to be clear, my wife is perfect. All right, capital P.
Exactly.
All right?
Exactly.
And the same thing, but it's so funny because I tend to, of course, I do have a positive disposition, but that like 1% of the time, or maybe 2% of the time I'm not, she is right there on me and being that person for me. You see,
that's the thing, Shawn. That's one of the other things, is we can get into those places of regret as well and all these things. And it's like a tunnel, and a tunnel filled with sinking sand that I talk about in the book as well as an analogy. And so that pressure cooker, you can all of these things can, so the tunnel thing is a good example. So whatever it is, whether it's the regret or the anger or the pressure, I didn't get X done. And you'll see where I'm going with this. In that tunnel, there's sinking sand. And you can either get stuck in the sinking sand of I didn't get X done, or the regret, or whatever it is, or you can actually accept the branch from Mac, from your wife, and you can actually then, because you can't, if you just do this in the sinking, you'll sink, because every bit of movement, every bit of chaos creates more chaos and you sink. But if you stay still, stay calm, create the gap, reach out for the help. And that's where giving perspective, it's so much easier to give someone else advice than give yourself advice. So we've got that wisdom that's inside of us. Because I was being interviewed about this. Someone asked me, but what if I feel like I don't have any wisdom? Then I said, well, when did someone last ask you something, ask you for advice? And then, oh, this and this. I said, did you give good advice? Where did it come from? You have wisdom. We're just better at giving it to other people than ourselves. So we've got to learn to reach out, because we do get perspective, and we definitely need to encourage more of that. We don't just have to wait for a therapist to tell us. We are loved ones. That's why we need community. That's why we need to build deep, meaningful relationships, because different people in our lives are going to throw us a branch and pull us out of the sinking sand.
We've got to have the willingness.
That's
another thing for us to doing the work. To reach out on that branch, because you might not even like, I don't like the length of that branch or whatever, you know, instead of just like somebody's extending the branch, take the branch. This has been so awesome. I love hanging out with you. I'm so glad I get to hang out with you more as well.
I love it too. Thank you.
This book is, please, everybody listening, don't just get this book for yourself. Get this for somebody that you care about. The chapters, as you mentioned, are very short, and they're very punchy, very insightful. I learned a lot.
Good. Thank you. You know so much, so I'm very honored.
I appreciate that. And also what you did was you gave language to certain things that I've thought about or considered before, you know, but I just didn't know, like, I was doing that thing, you know. And so it's fascinating, but also very helpful. And right now, and everybody's got to take action on this right now, because when you pre-order Help in a Hurry, you're going to get access to almost $1,000 in bonuses. And this includes the Help in a Hurry Summit, the Help in a Hurry Masterclass, a mini book with quotes and affirmations and all kinds of really cool stuff. And you're going to get all that for free when you go to helpinahurrybook.com. All right, helpinahurrybook.com. You can get the book from your favorite retailer right there on the website and pre-order the book. You're going to get all of these bonuses, which you were even a part of the summit that I did for the Eat Smarter Family Cookbook. These summits are phenomenal. The wisdom, the insights, and you get free access to this. And it's hundreds of dollars of value easily, and you get that for free. So I highly encourage everybody right now, go to helpinahurrybook.com, pre-order the book, get all those great bonuses, almost $1,000 of value in those bonuses. You're the best.
Oh,
really
thank you. You said that so nicely. Thank you. I want to get the book. You made me excited.
That's what it's all about, you know.
Thank
and
you
again,
so
I'm
much.
just so grateful for you. And, you know, I happened upon one of your books thanks to my daughter when she was in high school.
I love that. Yeah, I
right.
remember you.
And to have you here, and it's something, you know, that I get to talk with her about. And, you know, I've learned so much, and I'm so grateful because, you know, you've given voice to and are advocate for the thing that is most important. And unfortunately, in our culture today, we've been deflected from our mind and from our real power. And so I just really appreciate you.
You said that beautifully. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, the feeling's mutual. I love what you do as well, and I always love talking to you. I always come away feeling so wonderful. So it's a great green tree to go and build resilience when I think of our conversations. So thank you.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here.
There is now evidence in humans that the larger the leg muscle, the bigger the brain. And this fascinates me, right? Because we've always had an understanding that strength and muscle mass correlates to a longer life and a bigger brain.